Hello and welcome back to my Classic Traveller episodes, and this I think is the fourth installment of the world creation process, and we're in the middle of fleshing out our starting world of the tarot. I have it here to hand in the folder, so let's get it out. We've just gone through the themes and features, and the dreaded themes and features. We had survived the ordeal, come up with maybe some well, quite interesting features. Anti-technology feeling, quite a strong one, because we've got a strength of 1 to 6 and it's 5, so it's quite high up on the scale. And then a hedonistic outlook as well, present in the populace. So these are themes that are going to feature in the overall mix. So what I thought I would do, during my downtime, when I was not doing an AD&D episode, I really just took almost like an hour out and went back to the original Traveller UWP, Universal World Proof file, and determined, went through each category and asked some fundamental questions about those statistics, and kind of got my mind thinking about how it related to the factions that we'd generated, the imperial index, our political situation, these two themes, the anti-tech, the hedonism, the fact that we had a very thin tainted atmosphere, our hydrographics were 30%, we'd only got a population of 1 million, the democratic government that we had, all those things. I brought them all together, and I went through almost like item by item, and I thought, well, I'll just jot down some ideas and some thoughts, and also just how I want this world to almost like materialize for game purposes. And I thought, well, I'll do that before I go into the actual detailed, almost like checklist question. I call this a questionnaire type thing, where I answer some fundamental questions, because I thought I'll be much more armed to do that exercise if I almost have a kind of bedrock of almost like lore behind me. I've got some basic fundamental facts about this planet that I can say, yes, this planet is it has this atmosphere, and it's definitely composed of these gases and that type of thing. So I thought that would be a better position. So it was almost it's almost like what you could do with just the basic kind of raw material, with a few little add-ons that I've done. So as I say, I kind of, it didn't take me long, and it probably, the longest it took was actually, because I jotted it down in my book, and this was all my notes that I took, and that took me about an hour to kind of thrash that out. In fact, it probably took about half an hour, and then to draw it up nice and neat in categories and kind of organize it, that took about another half an hour. So what I plan to do is use this, use my little notes and go through each of these individual categories and show you just how I've kind of come up with the kind of like the setup for the planet, and basically crystallizing my thoughts on how that should appear. Okay, so the first thing we have, if we avoid talking about the starport first, because we've already determined it's a routine quality starport. Now with the Imperium, they maintain an average tech level of 11 and 12. So in this book here, when we go to the world section, for the animal encounters, and it's got tech levels. Average imperial is 11 and 12. So the starport will be probably average imperial. So it's probably going to be a minimum tech level 11. And the low level is probably one. It's probably more or less anything kind of goes on it. It's not within the Tarot's jurisdiction. It's run by the Imperium. There's an agreement, a tacit agreement, probably between this government and the Imperium, that there's certain kind of almost like turf that they both occupy. And as I think I've said, it's kind of symbiotic relationship. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. The Imperium set all these starports up fundamentally as a kind of trade conduit, and they technically they probably put up a lot of the capital, and have all the kind of servicing of the equipment, and it's really just designed to kind of ease interstellar trade. So we don't really maybe need to go into the detail of the starport at this stage. That's probably something for later on. Okay, I will go on to my first item, which is planetary size. Now, with the size, I told you that 5,000 miles, it's only slightly larger than Mars, because I think Mars would be a planetary size of 4. So according to, this is the Mongoose version, it had another column in the atmosphere, in the size classifications, and that told me that a size 5 is surface gravity is 0.45 Gs. So it's under half of what we have on Earth as gravity. So that's going to have a bit of an impact on, I've looked at the terrain and also the colonists, the people that actually live on this planet. So in terms of the terrain, our landscape is going to be probably very irregular. There's going to be a lot of valleys, very high mountains. There might be some strange looking improbable rock formations. So I'm thinking of things like pillars and mesas, which are basically raised plateaus with flat tops, and with probably lots of deep valleys round about. So it's going to look really quite otherworldly, really. There's going to be a lot of tall cliffs and, as I say, plateaus. So we've already got a kind of quite a distinctive geography to the landmass. And the majority of the place is land, because the hydrosphere is 30% water. So the majority of the surface will be land. So it's going to be very, as I say, quite irregular. It's going to be quite a dynamic landscape to explore on. Probably very difficult to get across. We might have to use a lot of air to kind of travel, helicopters, grav vehicles, that type. So that already puts a bit of a limitation on things. And also, when it comes to the colonists, they're probably going to be taller, thinner, and they're going to probably have more efficient muscles. Now, I am minded by the. I used to love the Kim Stanley Robinson. He wrote a series of novels set on Mars, called the first one was called Red Mars, and then there was Blue Mars. Oh no, was it green? No, Green Mars, and then Blue Mars. And this, it was almost like from the start of colonization, where you had the initial pioneers, and there was a group of, but I think it was about 100 men and 100 women, and they were the colonists, the initial colonists, and then it went through all the different stages of colonization and terraforming that they were doing, and with succeeding generations, the effect of the Martian gravity had an impact on how how the children of these colonists, how they developed and formed, and they became a lot taller. They were very athletic. It was really quite interesting to see how their metabolisms changed. So for this exercise, I'm going to use that as the kind of almost like the template to for a low gravity planet. I think when you're out in space and when you're floating around as an astronaut, you get this atrophy of muscles and bones. But I think that's to do with zero G. When it comes to like a lower G, you maybe get a lot of the benefits of not having to carry as much weight. It doesn't feel like you're carrying a lot of weight around, and there's maybe more scope for muscle development. So that some of the people, some of the later generations of these colonists are going to be a bit taller, and maybe a bit slimmer and more angular in their appearance. Okay, so the next thing I talked about or looked at was the atmosphere, and we had a very low number. We had very thin and tainted, and with the atmosphere I thought, well, it's tainted. Why is it tainted? So I think it's down to a high sulfur content in the atmosphere, and there's also high levels of CO2. So that makes it basically poisonous to breathe in without any kind of respirator. And because it's it's a very thin atmosphere, you need an oxygen supply anyhow. So the tainting from the sulfur and the CO2 combined with the low oxygen levels makes it basically, if you didn't have a respirator and an oxygen mask, you'd probably die within an hour or two. You'd certainly take a lot of lung damage from the atmosphere. The reason I've said that is the case is because there's been a lot of volcanism in the past, and that's created a high concentration of sulfur or sulfurous components in the atmosphere, very high CO2 levels, and the residual is now present, and it hasn't really been almost scrubbed from the atmosphere yet. It's still there. So in terms of the population, they've decided to live in sealed dwellings. They're not going to. Maybe there's the occasional dome present, and also as underground dwellings in the side of the cliffs. But the majority of residents are going to be in these almost like your standard building, but it's sealed to the outside. It's got probably rubberized doorways, and all the windows are probably specially sealed, so that they won't let any of the contaminants in, and maintain an environment inside the building. So I'll have things like little airports and airlocks and all that kind of stuff. And also I thought, well, as a little touch, it might be quite nice to have a slight tint and a light yellow to the atmosphere and the sky, so that makes it quite distinctive. It's not got this beautiful blue sky. There's a slight hint of a haze of yellow, which maybe it takes a bit of getting used to if you're a visitor. It's a wee bit disconcerting, but maybe it's a useful reminder that you shouldn't take your mask off. It does, even though it looks beautiful looking over this mesa, it's if you take your mask off, you're going to get a bit of lung damage in a few minutes. Okay, so that's the atmosphere covered, and again, that's all I've done is just look at the word very thin, tainted, and thought about just what it could be, and just wrote it down in black and white. The next thing was the related thing of temperature. We came up with a temperature of 5, and that on my chart, that means it's very cool. So it's within the temperate zone. It's classified as a temperate climate, but it's very cool. So it would be comparable to probably high up in Northern Europe, and also almost in a kind of tundra region. So planet-wide, we're going to experience usually cold weather. There will be some seasonal variation, and there's probably going to be quite low precipitation. So that sets the kind of ground rules for what the climate's going to be. So when we discuss climate later on, we've got a good idea of what the setup is. Right, the next one is hydrographics, and we've said that was a 3, and that's 30%. So that means that we have small seas and oceans. I've said that the surface water is slightly corrosive in regions, not the entirety of the oceans, but in certain regions and down to probably the sulfur component. Otherwise, they're okay. They're just the usual saline, salt water, and probably fresh water from any rainfall. The oceans are probably going to be quite deep, and that's probably a gravity influence. The fact that we've got all these high valleys and mountains, the oceans are going to be deep too, where we have oceans. Okay, so that's hydrographics. So it's already building up a bit of a picture of what this planet looks like, certainly from a kind of physiological viewpoint. And then we're on to the colonist side. We've got a population of 6, which is, and we actually calculated exactly 1 million. Now, I look at both population and government, and the government was a 4, which was a representative democracy. So I'm saying that the population is concentrated around the starport and a few urban zones across the planet. So this million, not many of them are out in the country. From that inference, the rest of the planet is mostly wilderness, outposts, and small settlements out with the urban areas. And these will be probably the preserve of these minorities that we've been talking about, that we've identified in the factions, and corporates. So any corporate concerns are going to be out with the urban areas. We've also come up with the idea that there is a contented population. The government appears to be popular. We also have a faction. The ruling faction is conservative. So we have a conservative society. And the view is that society derives its strength from simple things. That's basically their motto. Our strength comes from simplicity. And this is where we get this anti-tech outlook, where there's been a kind of just a wholesale rejection of Imperium tech. So they're saying, we don't want all this Tech 12, Tech 11, Tech 12 stuff. We don't think it's good for our society. We think it's a sign of weakness, falling for that. But there is a proviso. They will embrace the maximum of any technology they can get for any environmental protection. So that is like all these sealed dwellings that they have. The fact that they need environmental help against the fact that the atmosphere is so poor and they've got low hydrographics. So they will embrace any technology that is needed for survival, but the rest, anything else, is kind of rejected. And they call this, they've actually given it a term, and they call it the pragmatic compromise, where basically, it's common sense because I did actually allude to the fact in the last episode that there was a bit of a contradiction that you'd be anti-tech in such a hostile environment. Well, they've come up with what they call this pragmatic compromises. Yeah, that is a contradiction, and this is the way we get around it, is that we will take on the technology that is needed for survival. And this majority that are in charge, they are the current colonists, and they arrived 100 years ago. They came from a puritanical background, an anti-tech ethos. The Imperium wanted further development of this world, and they offered them passage to this colony to start up, and they gave them some help. So that's kind of like their history with the Imperium and where they've come from. So that shapes very much what they're all about. And then we had these factions that we developed. We had the feudal tech guys, the captive government, and the corporation as the groups. And there were two were fringe, and one, the captive, was probably the strongest, and that was like a minority. So I thought, well, what's the background to those? And I thought, well, the feudal tech, I think they're probably rich merchants, and they want more imperial technology. They want to get the planet up to tech level 12, the same as the starport, or 11, at least 11, and get with the Imperium. They think everything else is. They think these people are kind of more Luddites. They are drawn from probably from the colonists themselves, but they've always been maybe a bit more radical, this class, and they just think that this pragmatic compromise, it's all fair and well, but we should go further. We should embrace more technology. It's not a weakness. It's going to be our strength in the future. It's going to make our society stronger. It's going to make our economy. They're coming from very much from an economic point of view, that they think they'll get a stronger society through a strong economy. Okay, so they're the feudal tech guys, and then the captives. I think they're the original colony, and they are like a suppressed minority. And I'll come on to them. I did a bit more digging on them to try and link them up with some of the other factors that we'd ascertained about the world before that. Okay, and then we finally had this corporate government, or this fringe group, and I thought, well, that's actually a company on the planet, a local company, which is basically, they become almost had like a hegemony over the corporate life on the planet, and that's backed by the Imperium through its mega corporations. So that has Imperium backing, and again, it's got very much the same agenda as the feudal tech guys. It wants to get far more integration into the Imperium economy, and get everybody up to tech level 12, and forget about all this Luddism, where you're smashing up all the technology and just getting rid of it. Okay, so that, as I say, that only took about half an hour to do, and then I thought, well, I'll do a bit more to cover some of the other criteria, and specifically on this captive government, because I think with the last one, the last episode, I think there was assumption that they were like miners and they were the original colonists, and they had been suppressed. Well, I took that a bit of a step further. I said they are the original colonists, but the original world was populated by a group that embraced what they called the free ethos, which was an artistic, creative, and hedonist view of life, and basically a rejection of work. So they really just wanted to have a bit of a nice life without working. You're doing the artistic and creative pursuits and not doing any work. And the way they got around it was they brought these robots along, and they had a dependency on robots to do all the kind of heavy lifting for their society. Robotics in the Imperium is quite a thing, because I've got my notes on robotics. There's no AI, so there was a view that AI was not a good idea. So what happened in the Imperium was they decided, right, we're not going to have AI. We're going to have, but we will have robots, but they're not autonomous robots. They're not self-thinking. Well, only to the point of view where they are very smart at doing things, but they're not self-aware. So, trying to find where my little robots bit is that I had. Oh, it doesn't matter. I can come to that later. But in this context, they brought their own robots, and they did all the work for them. And what I'm saying is that they came 200 years ago, so 100 years before the previous current incumbents, and they set up a new society. And this was encouraged by the Imperium at the time, because I think they had a feeling that they were a bit of a wasted time, this group, and they almost like the world that they came from. I think the Imperium were quite keen just to get rid of them. They thought they are kind of troublemakers. They don't pull their weight in society. All they want is just to have a nice time. It's not really the Imperium way. We like to, a bit of grafting, get on, kind of work ethic. So they kind of said, all right, okay, we've got this lovely planet for you to come to. We'll give you some robots. Go for it. So they are that group. They are this captive group, and their influence has been suppressed. It's been viewed as weak, and by the conservatives, by this puritanical group that have now colonized it. So there's a bit of conflict between these two groups, but because they are so small a group, they have no real say in the government. They're a very minor force. And the conservative rule, the democracy, the representative democracy, and their populace are very popular, and they're always basically putting down this group, and they're used as a scapegoat, like any kind of minority, for all the ills of the society, if they ever come about. So that gives you a bit of background about these guys here. Right, on the technology side, we've got tech level 6, which was, in Earth terms, in our planet's terms, was, I think in our estimation, it was just after the war, after World War II. But with the colonists, they want to maximize the environment technology. Otherwise, keep low tech, or what they call retro look. So that could be like high tech disguised as antique. And certainly the tech bros, the feudal techs, and the corporation, and the captive, the ones that what they call the degenerates, they all really buy into that. So they try to get as much technology as they can, but they give it a real retro look. So it doesn't really look very modern. So it looks quite antique, and it's all hidden away, like behind bits of furniture and all that type of thing. It's very subtle. So that's kind of like the ethos on technology. On the Imperial Index, we had an Imperial Index of 5, and I realised that there was a decision point that we had to reach on the Imperium, and that was to decide just exactly what form of allegiance we had to the Imperium. And 5 meant aligned, allied, and tributary world, with a minimal imperial presence and significant local autonomy. So I'd quite like to see what of these 3 it is. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they are subtly different. So alas, we get a die roll on this episode. They are aligned. So this planet is aligned to the Imperium. It's singing from the same hymn sheet. If it came to a war in the region, they would probably help. They would probably allow the Imperium to send spaceships and whatever. They are on the Imperium side, but they are not basically kind of almost like a member of the Imperium. They're just aligned. The starport is an Imperium center that is allowed to thrive in cooperation with the Taro government. So that's very nice. Final thing before we get to the questionnaire is I made some environmental notes just about some of the observations that we've made in here about the atmosphere, the temperature, the hydrographics, and the size. And I thought, well, what sort of life forms that we're going to have on this planet? And View is basically doing a bit of trolling around the internet and wherever. We'll probably have some because of the gravity. We'll have tall, spindly life forms. There will be some flying and gliding. Animals or any fauna will have longer limbs. There'll probably be some jumping ability. They'll be generally thinner. There'll be quite, I think, in this one, I thought it'd be quite nice if they were quite graceful and elegant life forms. So quite almost like noble looking animals, and this is very much tunes into what this artistic, creative and hedonist group really liked about the planet when they came to it. It was like some of the scenery was breathtaking, and the plants and the animal life were similarly very impressive, and it almost like took your breath away type thing. So I quite like to have that as a kind of theme to do with if we have any animal encounters. When we do see the animals, there'll be certainly a graceful and elegant element to them. The tree dwelling is probably quite a factor. The swinging and gliding of things, like these squirrels that can jump out of trees and glide all over the place. And because of the thin atmosphere, they're going to have an efficient respiratory systems. Their muscles, they're going to be less dense but more efficient, a bit like some of the humans that are developing on this planet. Marine life, I thought, would probably be abundant, probably increased buoyancy because of the gravity. And the flora, well, I thought we'd have dense fibre for the trees. We won't really have bark and wood. It's going to be much more kind of fibre. They're going to be very tall. There's going to be extensive forests in the lower zones. Up in the highlands, there's going to be mosses and lichens. And there's probably going to be, in between, there's going to be extensive grasslands. So it is quite a, some people would say it's quite a beautiful planet. It's got some stunning scenery. Some of the life forms are very elegant and beautiful. It's really quite, apart from the atmosphere and the fact that you've got to put on a mask to breathe, and it would be, if you took your mask off, you'd be in trouble. It's got quite a lot going for it. So that kind of all sets up the scene for us to do this type of thing, where we look at the actual dimensions, and we're able to use a bit of rigor and also some background that were generated here to inform our decisions on these when we're filling these things out. Right, I think we will do this and get our questionnaire out. I'll get to the relevant page and our. So I think the point of what I was trying to make was you can do a lot from just the basic raw materials that you've got, and you just have a bit of time to think and put some bits and bobs together, and hopefully here we go. Take these items out so that we've got them to hand. Right, so and obviously I should be jotting down adventure points as we do this. I think there's a good chance that we're going to have a bit of friction. There already is friction between the factions. There's different priorities, so that there's a potential conflict. There could be some tourism aspects because of this, like a beautiful planet. It might have some rich patrons wanting to come. You know, it is setting up for maybe some interesting developments. I think we really need to just maybe just flesh out a bit more about tarot and its the things to do with its economy and its society, and we might have a bit more information to make some informed decisions on that. So the first thing to look at is the economy, and that's going to be natural resources, the economic basis, and I've got a bit of a mechanism to do that, which is to look at our trade table and just do a kind of random selection of where is the trade table? It's a bit further back, I think. Trade table, counters, animal, worlds. What's trade? What's trade after spade? What's trade? What's trade? It's trade at the end. Sorry about this. I should know where this is. I was looking at it just to here we go. Trading commerce. Right, this table here. I roll on this 3 times, and I select the most appropriate. Now, I think the way because I was studying this, I think the way this works is that there's probably more base items, you know, raw materials, and then more high-tech manufactured items in this part of the table. So it's more primary, secondary, and tertiary type splits. So let's just do our little exercise, and what this is going to do is basically determine, you know, what are the kind of main resources of the planet and what it's kind of interested in, and then we'll look at the trade classifications in detail and see how we could interpret them in terms of what these raw materials are, and also in line with what the overall planet's like. We haven't really kind of hinted at the fact of what the actual natural resources are in terms of actual things like, you know, whether there's coal or oil or you know, some of the minerals and that type of thing. But we can maybe make an inference. There is a very rich flora and fauna that we can maybe think about. So even things like pharmaceuticals or just, you know, basically meat or you know, things like that, that could be a factor. Just we don't really know. So it'd be quite interesting to see whether we get any natural resources or basically any items that you would think that this planet could actually make and maybe manufacture on a scale. You know, whether we could generate any of them. So I will do that. I'll just get my little sheet of my last sheet, and what I'll do is I'll do it on the back of this, so I don't spoil that one. So this is going to be trade, economy, and it's going to be our natural resources and our economic bases. So we will get the red and the black dice and see what we get if we do best of 3. So we get a 1 and a 2. So that means polymers. What sounds? That sounds as though we're kind of manufacturing them a bit, but maybe there's raw materials to make polymers, and that's part of the actual ecology, and we could have that. So polymers is 1, and then we have 6 and 6, which is vac suits. I don't think we're going to be doing vac suits, so we'll probably discount that. So vac suits have to be a very when it's been going on about how much of like Luddites they are, and I can't see them wanting to get stuck into back suits as a industry. And 5 and 4 is all-terrain vehicles, ATVs. So I would say that we haven't really made a choice that is sufficient. So let's go. I think when that happens, I was thinking about it myself. I thought, well, let's just go on to another round until we can come up with something that actually, because all planets will have a resource of some type. They have to have something that is a kind of lure for. Otherwise, they'd really just be. They wouldn't be colonized. There wouldn't be anybody there. We've really got to have some form of hook. So let's give it another round and see whether we can get best of 6. We can call it on this one. So 5 and a 1. That doesn't sound too great. Aircraft, no. Unless that's a very specialist type of thing. I suppose aircraft with the anti-technology thing. There probably will be a limit that their ethos goes up to. Maybe they cut off at something that's roundabout like maybe the 1950s. So they might say that maybe they could manufacture some very basic type of aircraft that conforms to their ethos, but I would say that's a bit of a left field, that one. And then we have a 60. They're all very high. 63 cybernetic parts. Oh no. I don't think so. I think they probably, if they had someone making cybernetic parts, unless it's in secret, which is always a possibility, that company, one of the factions, is making cybernetic parts and vac suits and ATVs in secret. That could be could be something. Maybe that's the way to interpret these roles. And we get a 15. This is looking more crystals. Crystals. Yes, I think that's the jackpot. Crystals. It's going to be crystals. So these, yeah, that could actually fit in, because when you think that makes it sound quite exotic. It fits in with the overall the artistic kind of almost kind of mysterious feel of this vibe of this planet. Crystals, it's maybe the original colonists were drawn here for these amazing crystals that they could do all their art with, and then hey presto, we can actually sell these things to the outside, to other planets. They really want it. So maybe they've got a good line in crystal artwork, and then they sell it as raw materials too. So I think crystals sound good, isn't it? I will keep these others because I think they are worthy of maybe potential adventure hooks. Because I was being a bit disparaging about saying, oh, maybe that company is doing it this secretly. Well, maybe it is involved in this high-tech type of manufacture, and it's doing it in secret, or it is developing some of these things, or maybe it's trying to retro engineer it and to appear that it isn't modern robotics, but it's something quite more advanced. That's enough. That is potentially an idea. Okay, now the economic basis of this economy. So let's just have a quick look at trade classifications and see what they mean. And we came up with 3 on our one. So our world, Tarot, has 3 trade classifications because of all the criteria in it. There's non-agricultural, non-industrial, and poor. So when it comes to non-agricultural, they import much of their food from our planet. While such a world may produce synthetic foodstuffs for local consumption, it probably imports quality food as luxury items. Okay, I think they will do. They've got enough local flora, and I suppose fauna as well, to do their own, I suppose, self-sufficient harvesting, and also cultivation, and any pastoral agriculture. But when it comes to probably luxuries, they need to import it. So let's do quality food. So they import quality foodstuffs and luxury items, and they are self-sufficient in I suppose in arable, or what they call arable farming, and pastoral. So there's enough plant life and animal life as a self-sustaining thing, and they've been able to maybe sort of semi-domesticate some of these things in the time that they've been there. Okay, and on the non-industrial, these are forced to import much of their finished goods. Non-industrial, yes. So I would say that they import the majority of their they import finished goods. And I suppose their own manufacture is going to be maybe more limited to the extraction. So it's going to be their extraction of minerals and base items, and predominantly crystals. So let's say that there are some other things, like maybe ores and maybe things like nickel and tin and that type of stuff, that they can actually complement the majority export, which is crystals. And because of this this almost imbalance, I would say they've got probably a bad balance of trade, so they are going to be probably economic imbalance of trade, which makes them a rather it's a downer on their economy. There's probably more aspects of being a poor economy, and a dependent on outside. As a poor world because they're undeveloped and marginal. Well, I suppose they are undeveloped. Maybe not a backwater, because they are in the center of this sector. It doesn't sound as though they're not center of the universe. This one, yeah, I think the jury's a wee bit out on the marginal backwater, but certainly undeveloped. We can say undeveloped. Okay, great. Right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call a halt for the moment. I think with the rest of it, these are quite big subjects, and I quite like to go into quite a bit of detail on society and culture. And then when we come to the actual physical environment and the ecosystem, I think that's worthy of a bit. So I think I'm going to be at least another session for that. And I must admit, my voice is struggling a wee bit. I'm having to make a few kind of cuts, and I usually do all my videos in one take, and I very rarely have to edit them together. But I've been finding that this I keep going on about this cough, but it's amazing. All our family and a lot of people I know, they've got this thing where they just keep on coughing all the time, and it just doesn't go away. And my one seems to just be hanging around, and it doesn't really seem to be going away. And I keep on using cough sweets and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm struggling a wee bit. So I think I'll just keep this one short and sweet. And I'd rather have a nice strong voice to talk about these interesting items next time. So I think hopefully I've shown you what you can basically do with just the raw materials. You can generate all sorts of nice, interesting backstory and interesting stuff that all feed into what makes it tick. And I think this questionnaire that I'm going to do will just bring it all together, and we'll be able to put it into our summary sheet. and I'll have some notes behind it, and we'll be able to summarize any adventure points that we can put in as a result. Okay, good. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.